This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
Can AI replace our creativity, or is it just there to enhance it? Is it just something that's going to get everyone from a 0 to a 5? Or can it bring someone who's a 5 in creativity to a 10? And what does this mean for our future of content consumption? Well, we're going to be talking about those things today and more on Everyday AI. Welcome. My name is Jordan Wilson, and I'm your host of Everyday AI. We're a daily live stream, podcast, and free daily newsletter helping everyday people like you and me not just learn generative AI, but how we can all actually leverage it to grow our companies and to grow our careers. So if you're joining us live, thank you. If you're on the podcast, make sure, as always, check the show notes. So look in the episode description. We have a lot of other great resources for you to check out. So one of those resources is our website. Every single day, people don't know this. Yeah, there's actually a newsletter written by me, a human. So we recap every single episode. We talk about what's going on in the world of AI news and a whole lot more. I'd say it is a free generative AI university. There's 200 plus videos, podcasts, old newsletters you can go read on our website for free in any category you care about. So you can go, learn about AI in education or AI in entrepreneurship or whatever you care about. All right. So now let's talk about what's going on in the world of AI news, because there's a lot. All right, here we go. So first, Anthropic is steering away from voting questions, according to reports. So artificial intelligence startup Anthropic is implementing safeguards for their chatbot Claude to avoid false information, particularly regarding elections. So Anthropic is testing a new technology called Prompt Shield that detects when users of its Gen AI chatbot ask about political topics, and then it redirects them to authoritative sources of voting information. So the company's decision to implement this technology was driven by limitations in Claude's ability to provide reliable and up-to-date real-time election information. So we're going to be hearing a lot about that. We've already seen Meta and OpenAI and some others put in some safeguards as well. All right, speaking of big companies, Gemini 1.0 lasted about a week. Gemini 1.5 is already out. So Google has already updated its newest version of its large language model, Gemini. So Google is launching a new and improved version of their large language model, Gemini, with an increased context window and improved efficiency for users and the company. So the model is said to outperform OpenAI's GPT-4 in most cases, and we'll see as benchmarks start to roll out here in the coming weeks. So what's really noteworthy is the impressive context window of 1 million tokens, allowing it to handle larger queries and process more information at once. However, some of those longer context windows seemingly are going to be limited to just businesses, larger businesses and developers, as the standard window will just have a 128K token context window, and that's what the general public will use. So that's about 96,000 words of back and forth before Gemini starts to lose its memory. So Gemini is part of the premium workspace products and has released a limited preview right now to everyone else. So you're not going to see all these full 1.5 capabilities, but they will still be rolling out slowly in the coming days. All right, last but not least, and this is what everyone's talking about. If you've been on the internet in the last 18 hours, you're seeing Sora. So OpenAI has released some previews of its groundbreaking new tech, Sora. So they just released at least some previews for its new text-to-video model called Sora, which can generate videos up to a minute long based on user input. So OpenAI is sharing its research paper and samples that you can actually go download to gain feedback, and is working on ensuring the safety and ethical use of the technology. So the company is collaborating with experts to test for potential harm and will publish safety evaluations. So if I have to give you my quick take on this, I did not believe it. If I'm being honest, I don't know a single generative AI tool I haven't used. I've used hundreds. Sora, it is mind-boggling so far. I do not fully understand how it can even produce the level of quality. I actually did a rundown of, comparing runway, prompts with Sora prompts. Sora, OpenAI shared the prompts that they use to generate these. So I did a side-by-side comparison. We'll have that in the newsletter as well. But wow, what a big day. But speaking of creativity, let's talk about that. And let's see, is AI just going to enhance our creativity, or could it actually replace us? But don't worry, you don't just have me blabbing on today. We have an expert guest. So I'm excited to welcome to the show. There we go. Paul Eder, who is a strategy and data consultant. Paul, thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI Show.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. I like to pretend like I know things sometimes, so this is good.
Same. Hey, we're all just pretending, right? Like there is no generative AI experts out there. We're all learning together. But Paul, maybe tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, who am I? I've been in the kind of the data and stats world for the past 20 years. I got a PhD in social psychology, which is, I say it's the study of normal people, if that exists. I basically help organizations become more efficient and effective in a variety of ways. I've been in government consulting for the past 16 years and helped just a variety of government agencies implement new processes and procedures. Some are tech-based, some not tech-based. So I've dabbled in and out of tech. But over the past year or two, I've really gotten more into the AI space.
And I'm curious, with someone with more of a data background, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, when AI came out, or quote unquote came out, but when it became popularized with these text to blank models, a lot of people just went down deeper in their own, kind of niche, right? So, I'm curious, even for you, with a data background, kind of what pushed you to look at the creative side, as well when generative AI started to popularize.
Well, this is where I'm kind of a marriage of the left brain and right brain, right? I view myself as kind of a data poet. It's the art meets science aspect of data. And I also kind of write poetry on the side, and I kind of do my own journaling and writing and things like that. So what really flipped the switch for me is when the large language models came into existence, and also the the art models that Midjourney has and things like that. And it just blew my creative mind, and it really made me less of a AI is a tech world thing to AI is an everyday thing. So look at that plug.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And hey, as a reminder for our live stream audience, thank you for joining us, everyone from Tara and Chrissy. We got people from all over. Daniel joining us from Buffalo. Thank you. But let us know, what questions do you have with AI and creativity? And let's maybe start at the end, Paul. So what is your overall take on AI? Is it going to replace creatives, or is it just going to help people, be more creative?
Well, I'll start, again, a little bit more of a background. I wrote my dissertation on creativity and how people and organizations can be more creative. So this has been something I've been studying for a while. And over the past year and a half, as this has become more popular, I've gotten in a lot of conversations, and probably my most, interesting conversations on social media, especially LinkedIn, have been in this realm, where there's people strongly on both sides where, hey, these new AI models, these are very creative, they're so creative, I'm afraid they're going to take over the world, versus, oh my gosh, my kindergartner could create this in the garage in a couple hours. What's the big deal here? The conclusion that I've come to is that in a lot of cases, people are confusing the act of creating with creativity itself. And they're substituting the concept of speed for creativity. Just because a tool can produce something that is, passable or acceptable within 30 seconds, it doesn't mean that something that's passable is creative, or that it took creativity to produce it. I always go back to what's the academic definition of creativity. And it's really a combination of two things. It's something that's novel, that's also useful. So it has to have both of those characteristics. And where the skeptics come down is that, yes, AI produces useful stuff, but it's not exceptionally novel. And in terms of, some of the, words that it produces, it borrows, it uses from other sources, some of the pictures and images it borrows. So in that aspect of it, it's producing something you can use, but isn't entirely new.
You know what? That concept there, I think, is important because, even when we think of different generative AI tools, a lot of them, in order to produce this, they're really just kind of recreating, right? They're
Mhm.
recreating what's in their training data. Most
Mhm.
companies don't say, but presumably it's anything that's ever been on the open internet, any image, I mean, any video. You can almost
And I'll
safely
stop you. I think humans do that too, but that's just my bias.
yeah, yeah. So, but I guess my thought is right. So,
Mhm.
as this improves, right? Because anyone that as an example used Midjourney 4 and then Midjourney
Mhm.
5 and now Midjourney 6, right?
Mhm.
The outputs are obviously getting better and better. So then I guess when it comes to speed and quality, what we just talked about there, what happens, right? When not only the speed obviously has caught up, but then what
Mhm.
happens when the quality, when it's not, 1 out of 10 are usable? What happens when it's 10 out of 10? Does that change the I guess answer to if creativity is just an enhancer or a replacement?
Well, you're speculating, and so in that regard, I'm still a skeptic, right? I know AI can produce great things, and it's going to produce things that I use all the time. But one of the things that I've been using it for is coding. I've gone from not being a coder to being a Python coder. But one of the frustrations that I have is that it constantly forgets the context or takes out things that I've said to include and things like that. So just from a usability standpoint and my personal experience with it, it feels like the bugginess of the output in terms of being anything greater than average isn't quite there yet, nor something I can fathom. So at this point, even looking at ChatGPT 4 versus 3.5, there were researchers that took a look at divergent thinking tests and how well they performed on them. ChatGPT 3.5 performs at about an average person level, whereas ChatGPT 4 is slightly above average person level. Whether will AI get to the super genius level? I don't know, but right now I'm happy with the slightly above average human level, and and that's a comfortable place for me. But I don't think it's something where I'm going to take the experts on my consulting teams and replace them with AI, because I want people who are experts, not slightly above average people on my team.
Sure. And I'm curious, so let's go back to a little bit because you said that you did your dissertation on creativity.
Yeah.
I want to explore that a little bit more. So
Mhm.
like first of all, can you tell us a little bit more about, when this was, but also how do you think, or maybe not, do you think if you did the same, dissertation today or next year, do you think it would have come out any differently? Do you think that your, like background and research would have changed the outcome of kind of what your dissertation concluded?
Well, my dissertation was in about 2008 timeframe, 2007, 2008 timeframe. 2007. Yeah, 2007. I'm going, you're asking me to think about timelines here. It really pertained, a lot of the assessment of creativity was supervisor assessment of employees and how creative those employees were. Now, if an employee is kind of in the background using some Gen AI and they typically weren't the most creative person. Maybe their supervisor doesn't know they're using it now and is getting wowed. So maybe there's a slight difference in how the people would be rated. But in the end, what I find is that people who are really not oriented towards being super creative tend to not even care about Gen AI anyway. It's really the creative class who's getting really jazzed about this stuff and using it. So even though it can make people who are generally not creatively oriented get the average, they seem to not really care about it. And that's just my personal experience.
Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on Gen AI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front-end AI strategy, you can partner with us too. just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
And then, so with that in mind, right? Because all of these generative AI tools are just getting very, very powerful, right? Like even, we talked a little bit about the new OpenAI Sora model, right? That was just released, about 18 hours ago. Do you think that that's going to change this, right? Do you think that this is going to, not just like, people are dabbling and, someone who's, not at all creative and they're like, not too jazzed about it, as you said, do you think that's maybe just because it made people average? But if it does make people, or if it has the capabilities to make people above average, do you think then that those non-creative people are all of a sudden going to be, hey, we're going headfirst into this, AI creativity thing?
I don't know whether they'll go head first, but their supervisors may think that they can be replaced with it. So if you can use Gen AI to get an average to slightly above average employee, why would you have a slightly below average employee anymore? And so I think that's where some people's fear is hey, is AI going to replace us? And in the end, it could replace you if there are certain leaders who kind of believe all employees are average and replaceable cogs. It's unfortunate, but that is really a mindset that some people have. And if a leader has that mindset, they can make the decision, well, I can save a lot of money by firing all these people, and not really notice that their complete output has turned to average versus when it wasn't before. So there is going to be some of that. And there already has been some of that where some, I know, notable news organizations trying to generate AI articles and then getting slammed for it because it's such poor quality.
Yeah, let's talk about that, right? Because I think a lot of people have already started to experience this over the past year, just getting bombarded with average written content, right? Because so many people early on, jumped on board with ChatGPT, and unfortunately, using the free version, which is, subpar, I think, especially if you don't know what you're doing. Do you think that as consumers, are we going to be hit with an ongoing avalanche of just this mediocre content? And if so, what does that even do to the concept of creativity? Is it going to be too hard for actually creative people to stand out in a sea of decent?
Well, personality becomes very important. That people will follow the people that they trust, and that they trust aren't robots. So especially if you're in social media, building that audience trust around you as a producer of human content is going to be very, very important. A lot of people, I see this all the time, and I'm so doubtful of it. People say, oh, I can tell the difference between AI and human content. I'm like, can you really? I want to see the definitive tests on that, because in the end, if you think that you can spot AI because it's like, oh, it does grammar right, it must be AI. I've had so many, ever since I started talking about AI, so many hundreds of people claiming that all of my articles and posts are AI. I'm like, well, obviously people can't tell because I write my own poorly written articles, right? You touted the fact that you have a human written newsletter. My first skeptical eyebrow raise was, is it really a human written newsletter? And just talking about AI makes you think you do everything with AI. It's such a bias out there now. It's so weird.
Yeah. How do we, because I'm sure a lot of people listening today are maybe creators themselves. They're trying to create content maybe for a small business, for a large business, or maybe to, establish their own brand. How can individual creators, balance, right? How can they still leverage generative AI when they need to, but yet what you just said, how can they still have that personality and that trust and that human piece still shine through?
Well, I think the key is storytelling, being able to share personal experiences, things that only you would know and that AI wouldn't know. and focusing on that aspect of things, because then people will trust that it's your own experience. Now, can people, tell their experience to ChatGPT and have it write it up for them? Well, sure. But in the end, that is still something that AI is producing that no other person could have AI produce. No one else can have AI produce your own experiences either. So there's it's still a differentiator in some ways.
Yeah, and we actually have a ton of great questions, so I want to get to a couple of these. But Mauricio, thank you for this. I think this is a great question. So Mauricio asking, would you consider effective prompt engineering as a creative tool? Paul, what's your take on that one?
Oh, 100%. My favorite guy who really started talking about prompt engineering was Jared Bonilla. He's a AI guy who's been just with ChatGPT and AI from the front, and really got me interested in a lot of different things. And he really introduced me to the concept of prompt chaining, which is, you have your initial prompt, but what do you do after that when you get your results? And maybe think about that from a more strategic perspective as well. So yeah, absolutely. That's essential for a creative person to not accept what they first get, and to continuously tweak and refine and develop their own prompt templates for getting what they need going forward. Absolutely.
Oh, and I couldn't agree more. I think anyone that spends a lot of time, hours a day prompting, will tell you one of the most important future AI skills, I would say, is communication, effective communication, clarity in the written word, silly things like typing. Like, that's important, right? Like, I think so many younger people aren't great at typing. So guess what? You have to do a lot, when you're working with generative AI, typing, right?
Well, in some cases, I know a lot of people who use like the ChatGPT app and use the voice to text. So typing is less important in that regard.
That's true. Another great question from Andy. Andy, what's up? Thanks for joining. So saying, would you agree that generative AI benefits generalists over specialists by extending the skills and scope of creativity in a wider range of area through upskilling? Great question, Andy. What's your take on that one, Paul?
Well, I definitely, I've actually posted a lot about being kind of a generalist who just can't niche down just by my personality. I tend to just kind of jump all over the place. And so for someone like me, it opens up new doors, like becoming a coder that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So I can speak to my personal experience that as a generalist, yeah, it's fantastic. But I know that there are specialists, especially maybe those more in like the healthcare space, who are really working on AI to help with diagnoses and very specific things like that. And so I can imagine, it's kind of beneficial across the board. Generalists just tend to be a little bit more inch deep, mile wide, and now I can be mile deep, mile wide, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it definitely changes. I think your outlook on not just like the creative process, but also how you distribute, right? It like what you can create on the front end changes everything that your company can or maybe shouldn't do on the back end. Our audience is on fire today. So many great questions. It's a Friday, right? Like normally,
my book is called Fire Starters, just so you know. So I'm setting fires everywhere.
I love it. All right. Well, here's a tough one. And Tara, thank you for your question. So Tara said, how can AI balance the enforcement of watermark attributions with the principles of fair use, ensuring that content remains accessible for educational review and commentary purposes without infringing on creators' right? This is like $1 trillion question right now. What's your take on this one, Paul?
This is one that I've written about, quite a few times on LinkedIn, and get a lot of people who are very strong in the copyright protection area. But my take on this is a little bit more, I guess, we'll say libertarian, freedom focused. Of if you're using something that's copying someone else's work and they can prove it, they have the legal system to help them do that. Something is not copied and not unattributed unless the lawyers say so and the judge says so. And so it's kind of, I'm more of a legal system absolutist on this, that if you think you're being infringed, take it to court.
Yeah. And that will be, I think, a topic that at least here on the Everyday AI Show, we'll be talking about Nonstop. I've talked, probably way too much about how 2024, we're going to see so many court cases for these exact things, copyright infringement, IP, watermarks. It's going to be messy. But
it's going to be messy, but OpenAI can afford really expensive
Yes.
lawyers,
Yes.
so they're going to win.
Yeah, I said they probably have like the 92 dream team of lawyers. The best in the world.
There's no way they don't win this.
Or just settle everything, right?
Yeah.
So Paul, another good question here from Daniel, and especially I think with your background, your dissertation on creativity, I would love to hear your answer on this. So Daniel asking, do you think generative AI will be its own course in school, or will it become part of curriculums in every class?
I have advocated that just from the start. With teachers immediately all over the place started fretting. Now I don't know if people are plagiarizing. I don't know, how to grade these kids' papers. And even my own son had something sent back to him saying, "This sounds too much like AI. Rewrite it." And in the end, the education system can't place itself in a place where it's in opposition to the zeitgeist. I'm there. A guy used the key word that I get bonus points for. It has to embrace it. And if it really wants to train children for the future, incorporate it into classes as much as possible. And, teachers can easily develop rubrics where they look at, hey, what was my initial prompt? How did I develop a prompt chain based on that? How did I revise the final product? You can ask for all stages of the process. If you're worried about the final product is going to be plagiarized, ask them to show you each phase. And that's in my mind, what's going to have to happen if we want our kids to know this stuff and succeed with it.
Love that. Great question, Daniel. Great answer, Paul. And hey, FYI, teachers, admin, everywhere out there, I don't say this enough. There is no such thing as AI content detection. It literally doesn't exist. I've probably spent 30 hours, trying out everyone. Not a thing, y'all. Just putting that out there. So Paul, we've talked about a lot. We've talked about the act of creativity versus, the act of creating something versus creativity. We've talked a little bit about even your own personal experience, with coding and with your background, your dissertation in creativity, right? So as we kind of wrap up here, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are constantly thinking about how AI does impact them either as creators or potential creators. So maybe what's your one takeaway piece, that you can give to people that, that they can, if they're interested in becoming more creative with generative AI, how do they do it and what should they keep in mind?
I use AI as a starting point, but not a finishing point. If what you're doing is taking AI content and cutting and pasting it and giving it to someone, you're going to be average. If what you're doing is taking what you initially get, adding your flavor, enhancing it, even if you're doing AI art or AI video, incorporating that with something else that you're doing in a more nuanced way, that is going to be just more beneficial for society. And if you're in social media for your audience, than just any kind of cutting and pasting any day. So that's what I advocate.
Great advice. I love that. It's not a starting point; it's a finishing point. Well, that's our finishing point.
The other way.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you for correcting me. Hey, it's Friday for all of us, right? Like, hey, that just shows you I'm not an AI Jordan. I'm a human. I make mistakes, right? Yeah. But hey, we covered so much here, Paul. Thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI Show. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
And hey, as a reminder, that we covered a lot. So make sure you go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for that free daily newsletter. We're going to be recapping what Paul and I talked about today, as well as a lot of other things, all that news we talked about and a lot more. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you back for another episode of Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.